So if you think about getting developers, you think of Lagos. You think of getting AI engineers,
Think of Lagos.
think of Lagos. When you think of getting DevOps engineers, you think of Lagos.
I think that's achievable.
Right.
Very realistic.
Right.
As long as they don't japa. This episode is proudly supported by Orca.
And the episode would not be possible without your support. So kindly like, comment, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Lost in Lagos podcast.
Thank you. Lagos is often called the Silicon Valley of Africa, a title that speaks to its energy, talent, and entrepreneurial spirit. But titles alone don't build ecosystems. Real innovation requires systems that are grounded in local reality, local constraints, and local opportunity.
Yes, and for a long time, innovation in Africa has been measured by proximity to Western models, venture capital, unicorns, startup ecosystems. But Nigeria has its own economic structure, its own social fabric, its own pressures and advantages. So the real question becomes, what does innovation look like when it is truly designed for us and not adapted from somewhere? Our guest today, Olatunbosun Alake, the esteemed Honorable Commissioner for Innovation, Science and Technology in Lagos State, is the perfect person to answer this question. He oversees the IT infrastructure for the Lagos State government, effectively serving as the state's de facto IT department.
Yes, and beyond his impressive IT stewardship, Commissioner Olatunbosun is a driving force, leading a dynamic startup funding function, providing crucial support to technology startups across diverse verticals such as fintech, agri-tech, construction tech, and the circular economy. Welcome.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I guess we just dive right into it.
Right into it.
So innovation itself, the word is like a buzzword now. Everybody and their mother says they're innovating. Everybody and their mother says innovation is all around them. People hear innovation and think, oh, startups building venture capital or new apps being released or no one thing or the other. But innovation, for most people living and working in Lagos, I think innovation would be in how they live and how they experience Lagos, if they have dreams, if their potentials can be unlocked. I know last week it does some things like that. So I guess my question is, the word innovation in Lagos today, what should it practically mean for Nigerians?
Fantastic question. And once again, thanks for having me. I think I've been waiting for a Lost in Lagos podcast, so it's great to be here. I think innovation generally, from a Nigerian context, maybe even a global context, is solving problems, right? And the route or the procedure that takes varies from place to place. In Nigeria, in Lagos specifically, innovation from our perspective is using the resources you have to solve the problems that are here, right? Whether it's a new form of transportation or some type of new material for building roads, for instance, or recycling, unique ways of recycling waste, right? So it's using the resources that are on ground to solve the problems that plague everyday Nigerians. And that's the approach we've taken, right? Is how do we not necessarily just import solutions? How do we equip and build our own solution pipeline in Lagos? That's been underpinning our philosophy. That drives a lot of the activities, right? Whether is even our programs with research and development programs in the universities that we sponsor. It's about using what we have, right, to be able to solve the problems that are here. Of course, there are times we can borrow some things, but solutions must be sustainable, right? And so we are very, very local focused, right? And for us, that's innovation, really.
Yeah.
And we think it really behooves upon us, or it's our mandate to make sure that innovation is a culture, in Lagos. That's our ultimate goal.
It becomes an intrinsic part of
the
every day
system.
rather than
Correct.
something
Correct.
that we just add on.
Absolutely.
At the end.
If you look at other countries, maybe specifically the US, there is a very strong DIY culture.
Yeah.
Right.
Do it
True.
yourself.
Yes.
You know, you go to the store, you buy something.
Buy the
It might be too
materials,
expensive to
yeah.
hire a carpenter. You buy the materials, you construct the thing
Solve the
yourself.
problem. Yeah.
And in doing that, a lot of people have made discoveries.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, ma'am.
What?
Sorry, ma'am, but you can't sleep here.
Why?
This is Okamo showroom, ma'am.
Fine. How much for the bed?
Excuse me, ma'am. Place the toy. Just...
Why don't we have that same type of culture? In fact, I argue that we should have it more
here,
because, you know, we might not be able to afford fancy solutions.
Yeah.
Right. But
Right.
why don't we have that? I think that's a good question.
It's also a culture issue. It's something that I think the educational curriculum also has to take very seriously. When I was growing up, you were studying to pass exams. You know, that has been the culture growing up. But really, education is really about looking at the world and really making sense of it, looking at the problems and really practically looking for making things better, right? And it just goes beyond knowing things. There's really a practicality, a utility in being able to look at the environment and seeing, you know, just connecting the dots and seeing. I think education should follow that route. I know there are things being done now to make education more practical, but I think it's from education that culture is developed, and I think that is where maybe for some of us growing up in those days we might have lacked it. All our parents wanted to see were A's,
Yeah.
and you had to study everything
Yeah.
to be able to get A's. Maybe not necessarily being out on the field, practical
Like the method,
education
yeah.
and all of that. But I think that's where we need to go if we are going to be creating value as an
Right,
economy.
so we need to actually adapt our mindset about education,
Yeah.
so that it fits more with innovation.
Absolutely.
So that we're not just following a curriculum for the sake of following a curriculum.
Fantastic what you just said. An example recently, China actually announced recently that they will be awarding PhDs based on product development.
Oh, wow.
Right. So people that actually invent things and actually bring out a product as opposed to a theoretical thesis. Right, that they are ready to start doing that, right? And if you are able to invent something or put out a unique product that solves a problem, then you can get your PhD, as opposed to just going through a theoretical procedure, right? I'm sure that will still be available, but they recognize the practicality of practical education and relating it to the world.
As you said, innovation and technology comes from necessity.
Yeah.
Historically, I mean,
Yeah.
we see startups solving problems,
Yeah.
bringing solutions, and you mentioned that you have been funding some of these startups. What is one of the startups that you are most proud of in terms of the
That's
impact
a tough
they've
one.
had?
That's a tough question.
Or maybe you want to mention a few, because I think it'd be interesting to
know,
see
yeah,
and
right.
to know what's actually happening, because maybe
Yeah.
we don't hear about these stories enough.
Absolutely. Let me talk about one startup. The name of the company is called Price Pally. Price Pally aggregates food buying for different customers, right? At the time when food prices were going up, their own solution thesis or problem thesis was, how do we make it cheaper for consumers to buy food. And so through technology, they aggregate purchase orders, right? So that the overall cost comes down, right? And that's one company that, in fact, that was one of the first companies we funded as LASRIC. LASRIC is, for people that don't know, is the Lagos State Science Research and Innovation Council. It was a body of private sector, public sector, academia professionals that the governor set up to fund innovation projects, companies, startups, and all of that. So Price Pally was one of the companies that we funded, and we thought this was a very unique idea. It's solving a practical problem in the society using technology, right? And today, Price Pally is very successful. In fact, I think we checked on them about 2 years later. They had like upwards of a 30% profit margin. Wow. And that's not very common for startups to have that level of a profit margin. Some startups bootstrap and they raise money for years without a profit. They became profitable pretty soon because it was a service that was needed. Right. And so that's a very, very interesting company. Another company we funded was TerraWork. Think of TerraWork as the Fiverr of Nigeria, or the TaskRabbit, or what's the other, Upwork of Nigeria. So it's like you have a skill and you want to find customers, right? So you can create a profile on.
So a carpenter, for example.
Yes, exactly, and they can book your services right on there. So it gives employment to those that may not have the funding to do a marketing campaign or things like that, or perhaps people that are looking for your services, they might be far from you. TerraWork is a platform that you can find some of these services, and also you can market your own services for customers across the globe, right? So it was opening up African entrepreneurs to the wider audience.
Graphic designers, tech
you name it.
People,
exactly.
So from your example, we see that innovation produces successful companies, for example, like a Price Pally. But not most times, not like the broader societal systems, like maybe public infrastructure, educational access. How do we ensure that the innovation that we make local not only produce successful companies, but produce systems that make our society within Lagos actually improve?
Absolutely. I mean, you're right on the money, because solutions can be successful commercial operations, which actually create jobs.
Well,
because Price Pally had to hire people. From when we funded them in Lagos, they've moved to over 3 cities, right, in Nigeria. So they are creating jobs there. But I get what you're saying. Civic solutions. There was a company that we funded. What they were doing was taking waste material, right, and trying to make interlocking stones.
I read about that in the interview. I found that so fascinating.
I didn't see that.
Yes. The idea was, how do we, number one, take care of waste systems, right? And how do we make something much cheaper and more readily available with local materials? And they started taking plastic PET bottles and putting it in the material mix for interlocking stones, right? That in itself is a civic solution. It's also a commercial solution, and it's creating jobs, right? And so if you look at the unit of any economy is the individual. The value the individual produces adds to the GDP. And that's where taxes from government even come from. So the more successful we make individuals, entrepreneurs, and companies, the more a country is successful. So that's the way we see it. We in Lagos State specifically, we are very private sector oriented, right? The more private sector succeeds, the more government succeeds. So it's in our interest to enable the entrepreneurs, the private sector,
creators,
and do not get in their way as much as possible, right? And how else can we enable them? How else can we enable solution provision, right? Some other companies we funded, some VCs, funders might not touch them because they are too early. We come in there and we fund them at a very early stage.
Interesting.
So that by the time they are expanding their services, a VC or an angel investor can see a profit motive now, because when companies are very young, it's very hard to see a profit coming out of there pretty soon. Investors want their profit, but government can enable that area where there might not be much profit, but we can get it to a level where they can now attract a lot of funding, which is what Price Pally has done. They have investors from different parts of the globe now.
So this is very interesting. I don't know, I hope this doesn't cause. So you spoke about the government not getting in the way. So maybe regulations and like some policies.
Sure.
So
I know that's a very popular topic.
Yeah. So in 2023, there was, I think, a lot of companies, but there is this, like, okay, let me not mention names. There's this particular fintech, I think they were the first to introduce the phone numbers as account numbers, even before like it kicked off. So they were a very successful company, but I really don't know and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know how these regulations and policy things work. But I know that their license were revoked. I think there was an era where a lot of fintechs, their licenses were revoked. So I don't know the rule exactly that they broke, but they were actually impacting as a public sector. They were helping Nigerians. They were making so much, impact. How we've seen these cases where they just get shut down. And meanwhile, like I'm hearing now that the government can also help them.
Sure.
So how, I guess my question is,
what's the balancing act?
Yes.
How do you balance,
even if they make these mistakes, but you see their impact and support them?
Absolutely. And it's a fantastic question. And I say, we say to entrepreneurs, make sure you know your industry, right? It's very important that you acquaint yourself with the things that happen in that space. And I tell a lot of entrepreneurs, the regulator is actually your best friend.
Yeah.
Right? In the case of the company you talked about, I'm not quite sure who they are, but it seems that you said they were using phone numbers as accounts, which means they fall under the financial services industry,
microfinance,
which is regulated by the CBN and other financial. The financial services sector is one of the most heavily regulated sectors in Nigeria. In fact, across the world. Why? Because it deals with people's money.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to play around with people's money.
Yeah.
It is otherwise you're going to have lawsuits, you're going to have serious issues. And that is why in the financial services sector, it's very stringent. You have to adhere by strict rules. And I'll give you an example. I don't know if, and forgive me if I'm being an ageist here.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you are old enough to remember. In the 1990s, right, there were a lot of Nigerian banks, and the regulatory environment was not as strong as it is now. Banks were failing left and right. If you put your money in a bank on a weekday, maybe on a Monday, there's a high chance that bank could have failed by weekend. Your money was gone. And that was because the rules were not strong. Depositors' capital was not protected and all of that. And then in 2004, 2005, a man named Charles Soludo came and became the CBN governor, right? And they increased the minimum capitalization for banks, which means that, look, if you are keeping people's money, you have to have some level of backup security. A reserve ratio, a cash reserve ratio must reserve. And for you to have a cash reserve ratio, that means you must be well capitalized, right? And the Nigerian Depositors Insurance Commission insures every deposit up to a certain amount. But there's way more than that. I mean, you could have millions of naira in your account, but NDIC might not be able to cover it. It only covers up to an amount. So a bank has to have very strong policies and procedures. And those policies and procedures have to be made sure that they are being followed. The CBN does that. So it's very strong. So not just any company can just come and say, oh, they want to do this. They must be familiar with what gives in that. And I'll give you an example. I think in 2019, there was over $430 million of fraud in the crypto market, with people losing a lot of money, right? And so that's why I tell a lot of people, I say you have to be acquainted with the rules and regulations, so that you don't fall afoul of what happens. Because if you lose people's money, trust me, it is worse than losing your license.
And at the end of the day, I think the scapegoat becomes the government, because, they're trying to shut us down.
Exactly.
But they don't realize that they're actually protecting.
Yeah, they're protecting
their interests.
And let me tell you, when Soludo in 2005 increased the minimum capital requirements for banks, increased the reserve ratio, it was more a stringent environment. Some banks could not survive. Some had to merge.
Yeah.
That's where you have the likes of the GTBs today. And they were complaining that it's too strict, you are not allowing innovation.
But now look at the financial sector in Nigeria. It's one of the most impressive in the world.
Actually,
do you understand? It's now, after that, you started seeing banks, Nigerian banks, showing up in global ranking.
Yeah.
You understand? So I tell a lot of people, regulation can either, be a stumbling block to you, or it can actually launch you. It depends on how familiar and how well you master it, and how well the regulator too is your friend. There was a former bank CEO that was telling me that, he spent 50% of his time in Abuja because he was always going back and forth with the regulators, because the job of the regulator is to protect citizens. They take that job very seriously. And so when you come with something new that is probably not tested, their first stance is skepticism. And so that's why for us in Lagos, what we've been trying to do is come up with test beds for entrepreneurs and young companies that, look, test your solution in a closed environment. CBN has done that too. The Securities and Exchange Commission has opened a sandbox where young fintechs, entrepreneurs, young companies can test their solutions in a closed, much more less risky environment.
But monitored. Yeah.
So that if it's good, it can now scale. Open banking had this. There's going to be a lot of open banking startups soon. But there's been a lot of tests prior. So these are some of the things. And so I tell young people, look, regulators can be your friends. In fact, they can make you focus and concentrate. And when you do that, you are able to hone your services in that sector.
Yeah. And there was a period where we had such a huge spotlight on tech businesses in Nigeria, unicorns coming out, everybody wanted to invest, and then suddenly there was a period where nobody wanted to invest. And then that question of trust comes back into play. And what happened during that period where that trust was, and you've mentioned trust a few times, was compromised. And I see that it's changing now. We're going back into that confidence in the economy, in the government, and VCs are coming back, people are coming back and investing, and international expos are happening because there's an appeal here. So what is changing that's bringing those people like JITEX or coming back? What is happening in the environment, in the ecosystem where
absolutely
the confidence is being built back up?
Great question. The ecosystem is not perfect. So let me just first of all put that out there. There are still a lot of structural things that need to be addressed, and they will be addressed. Data is one thing, identity is another, and as you know, those are being addressed. But there's been a lot of interest because things are happening. There's proof in the numbers. I mean, if you look at since 2021, 2022, when Stripe took over Paystack,
Yeah.
right? And you know, a lot of investors started looking into the ecosystem to see, wow, there must be something happening here. The list goes on: Flutterwave, OPay.
Just switch.
Mandela.
number one causative agent is the population, right? It's a large market.
Human
right?
capital.
There's human capital. So that in itself is attractive to any investor.
Right.
Right. The second is, at least in the financial services sector, there is a level of stable regulation. In fact, a lot of these fintechs that have come out of Nigeria, Lagos especially, is because of stabilized regulation in certain sectors, like financial services. Like I said, banks having their minimum capital requirements increased, more stringent rules. When you look at innovations like the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System, NIBS, right, which I can tell you a lot of countries, even today, don't even have.
No.
Yeah.
I remember the US, as back as 2018, when I was trying to transfer money in a hospital, and they're like, they don't do that.
Yeah.
Can you write a check? I'm like, I haven't written a check
In such a
in
long.
ages.
Yeah.
You
Do they even
understand?
give checkbooks anymore?
You understand? So, NIBS was such ahead of its time.
Yeah.
And that allowed a lot of fintechs to layer their services on top of that
yeah, true.
infrastructure. So that is so, as regulation gets stable in more industries, you see more investors coming in. Then you see the talent as well. The talent is quite. I was talking to some people at AWS a couple of years ago when they were trying to move to Nigeria, and they put out a call out for DevOps engineers across Africa. In some countries, they got single digits, but in Nigeria, they got quite a number, at least not a whole lot, but at least much higher than the regional average, right? So you could tell that the talent was also here. And then just the dynamism and the ingenuity of our entrepreneurs as well, the energy.
Right.
I think those are the things that have been attracting, the investors and the international community to see that, look, there must be something going here. Jitex, for instance, that started hosting the Jitex Nigeria show in Nigeria last year. Part of the reason they came is that we had been going to Jitex, and we had been going with startups.
I see.
Right,
Okay.
putting in front of investors. I remember in 2022, we went with 15 startups. We were the largest African contingent. The next year, we went with like 13 startups. And they're like, whoa, what is good? Like, this market is huge.
yeah.
And they're like, look, we're coming
Let's
here.
come here.
Because they know we can't bring 100 startups.
Yeah.
They're like, we'll bring the investors here.
To you.
You understand? And I don't know if you were at the show last year, it was packed.
How many exhibitors were there? How many represented?
So there were about 600 exhibitors.
Wow.
About almost 700 startups.
Wow.
Visitors from 78 countries.
Wow.
That's
Right?
that's big numbers.
From across Africa, Middle East, the UK, some parts of Europe and all that. And this year I'm hearing it's going to be
Bigger.
much more,
Much,
bigger than
yeah.
that. So this sector is very, very promising. And we in Lagos, we want to be able to structure it properly. We want to be able to even turbocharge it, which is what we've been doing with our activities with LASRIC, with funding the startups at the very base level, funding research and development in universities, so that invention actually takes place in Lagos. Because that's one thing we really want to support. Mentorships for entrepreneurs, programs that we have through our Lagos Innovates program. Yes. And training programs, different things, so that we continue to turbocharge the ecosystem for growth. And something that I think will also be very important is legislation. our innovation bill that we are trying to pass. Very important. That kind of codifies the pipeline of innovation, right from when you have an idea, from when you open your company and start your commercial operations. It's a pipeline that we think we need to help turbocharge.
What was the progress with that? I know that there was a...
Yeah. So today, the formulation bit is done. It's at the Ministry of Justice. Okay. Why that is because they need to make sure that it's legally compliant. It agrees with government ecosystems. After that is done, it goes to the Executive Committee of Lagos State, which is chaired by the governor. And after that, it passes through that, then it goes to the House of Assembly. The House of Assembly calls for public stakeholder sessions, right? They have a first and second reading. After that, it's passed. So it goes through the procedure of the rigors of every, so that it captures as much as possible the incentives and the things from stakeholders, so that it's a complete law.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like everything you're doing is not just with passion, but with intention. So it's and with that in mind, there's been a lot of talk about Nigeria's economy being the top 3 by 2050. And tech is going to play a critical, pivoting role in taking Nigeria there. What do you think that's going to look like for Lagos as a city? And I know you are part of the team or the people that are setting these foundations and the structure that is needed to get us in the right place. I remember there was a lot of talk about, Nigeria's economy by 2030. We're actually at 2030 almost, and we've come a long way.
We still have a long way to go.
We do. So, what do you think what that's gonna look like by 2050?
So, by 2050, and I'll say that's a prediction I like, but if we're going to get there, there's some deep work to do. Number one is talent. We need to invest heavily in talent. And that is being done. If you look at what Minister Bosun Tijani is doing at the federal level,
right?
The 3MTT program, 3 million technology talent, and being able to have talented people creating value. I think that's your number one ingredient. We need to invest heavily, and I say it again, heavily, with emphasis on talent. If you invest in talent, the talent creates the value, right? And I think we have to be very intentional about that, and we are being intentional about that. I think the next step is the ease of doing business. It's got to be easy for people to start businesses. It's easy enough, right? But it could be easier, right? And the availability of resources, agglomerating together. I think one thing we have to do in government is to talk to each other better. There are so many government agencies that are in silos. And that reduces
productivity.
Not only that, the ease of doing business. Right. Yes, eventually it affects productivity, but even getting different permits, right? You have to talk to different agencies. We are trying to work on that with an IT system that aggregates all of them together. But resourcing, making sure that resources are agglomerated, right? It's so easy. In Dubai now, to start a business, to get your license is 1-2 and you're done, right? And that's something I know Minister Jumoke Oduwole at the Federal 2 is also working on, a single window where, all the things you need. We've also got to make it easier for international capital to come in and come out. That is being done because now, as you can see, that's what's contributing to the stability of the Naira now, or the appreciation of the Naira, because investors can move their capital out. When investors know they can move their capital easily out, they usually don't move it out. Because they just feel a sense of comfort. I can move it out at any time. Okay, let it stay,
Yeah.
it's fine, I'm not rushing since I can move it out. But if they feel they can't move it out,
Panic
they will
sets
move
in.
it out.
Yeah.
It's counterintuitive, but that's actually what happens.
Yeah.
So you've got to give the business community a level of comfort, right? For them to come and set up, create the value, and drive your GDP numbers, right? They've got to be able to have the talent available. And for us in Lagos, we have a plan, Lagos State Development Plan, 2022 to 2052, which wants to make Lagos the human capital technology hub of the world. So if you think about getting developers, you think of Lagos. You think of getting AI engineers,
Think of Lagos.
think of Lagos. When you think of getting DevOps engineers, you think of Lagos. When you think of getting hardware, perhaps even robotic engineers, you think of Lagos.
I think that's achievable.
Right.
It's very realistic.
Right.
As long as they don't japa.
So that's another thing.
Yeah.
And that's why while you're investing in talent,
Okay.
parallel, you've got to make the business environment conducive. You've got to make, the standard of living conducive.
Appealing.
You
so people
understand?
stay.
When you do those things in parallel, even though it's not easy, I can tell you. And a lot of countries didn't get there in one day.
No.
It makes it a much easier conversation. Part of the provisions we put in the innovation bill is what we call a returnee program,
Okay.
right? Where talent from abroad, Nigerian talent from abroad, in different frontier areas, robotics, AI, can come back to Nigeria if they want to set up a research program, a business. Government can assist them
Okay.
in an easier setup. That's, you talk about a brain drain, that's a brain gain.
Yeah.
That's, you are bringing them
Yeah.
back, right? So that returnee program is in the bill where you kind of give them a soft landing for them to come and do their work here. They set up and all of that, and then they get maybe it's funding or incentives here and there. We think that's very important. A lot of countries have done that. South Korea, China, where those people now come and set up and they create value. So these are some of the things that I think we need to do for us to be able to get there. We have less than 30 years. That's the Lagos State one. I know for Nigeria, we want to be $1 trillion economy.
Yeah.
We're almost at the
Yes.
but for Lagos, the human capital center of the world by 2052, the technology human capital center.
And to be honest, I think a lot of people are looking back at Nigeria and thinking, America doesn't look so great
Yeah.
anymore.
I'm not going to lie to you. The US has been a great contributor to the growth of the startup ecosystem in Lagos and Nigeria by extension. Most of the VC funding that
It's
has
coming
come
from
has
the
come
US.
from US companies. And I can't take that away.
No, they can still come, but bring our people back.
Yeah, I can't take that away because, they have the risk appetite.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
even the
yeah.
larger
Able to-
pot
yes,
backed.
and I have to thank God for that risk appetite they have. They can go into places, frontier markets, and just, this looks like a good idea, even though, because of when interest rates went up in the US, that funding kind of nosedived a
It
little
did,
bit.
yeah.
But we are trying to see how local capital can plug the gap in that. And local capital must, our own elite class has got to be the one funding
Funding,
yeah.
the idea so that it's not just owned
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
abroad.
if you're not investing in your own people,
yeah.
then why would you expect
Others
a
to.
foreign investor to do it?
Absolutely. And it's also as a result of the lack of knowledge of that
Yeah.
sector by a lot of, most Nigerian millionaires or billionaires want a sure thing. Real estate, oil and gas,
Yeah.
which has been,
Lucrative.
but yes, but if the banking and finance sector has taught you anything, a lot of the banking and finance sector today were pioneered by very young people in the 90s, right? A lot of the bank MDs now were very young in the early 90s. They took a chance. They started banks when some of the laws were opened up for new entrants to come in, and some of the banks are doing very well now. So it's the same way some of the new technology entrepreneurs are today. We need to build our own infrastructure, our own cloud systems. We need to build data centers. That's a very particular area that I'm trying to focus on now. We need to build our own data centers, our fiber optic connectivity. By the way, Lagos State has contributed to over 3,000 kilometers of fiber optic cable over the past 3 years. And there's another company now that I think we'll be partnering with that will do about 10,000 kilometers of fiber optic in Lagos. So making other areas more connected. So there's a lot going on for the future to be able to achieve some of these things, and we hope we do.
And it's super exciting. It's such a pleasure to have a seat at the and watch this all happening. I think it's so exciting to watch those goals being met. And we're very grateful for people like you for initiating and propelling them forward and supporting and building the foundation. So thank you. And thank you to the whole Lagos State, because we have seen a lot of improvements, and it's great. And Lagos State is not paying me to say that. I just want to make that clear. But
I don't think we could even have. Well, no, we can't afford. We can't afford. But
we'll speak later. Thank you so much, Subosun. It's been such a pleasure to have you.
Same.
I feel very educated.
Thanks a lot. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
Pleasure for us.
Yeah.